What's up, guys? So today I want to talk about my little secret that you guys can use to gain 20 pounds of muscle in a single off season, whether that be a year or 8 months or however many months you're going to do an off season for. So let's get into it. There is no secret that you can use to gain 20 pounds of muscle in a single off season, unless you plan on taking like a 4 or 5 year off season maybe. But unless you plan on using performance enhancing drugs, which I am by no means encouraging that you do. I've got a ton of videos about the dangers and the morality of all kinds of drugs, and you can just check those out if you want. But if you plan on staying natural, I think that the importance of this video is that I want you guys to set realistic goals for yourself and realize that the amount of muscle that you can gain naturally in a single off season in a given amount of time probably isn't as much as you think it is, but at the same time, just a few pounds of muscle is actually a pretty big difference in appearance. And let's take a look at some of my past pictures that you guys can sort of laugh at if you want, and sort of get an idea of what I mean. So, these first two pictures, I know a lot of my friends will get a kick out of this, but these were taken in December of 2011, at the peak of my, I guess, my first bulk or off-season or whatever you want to call it, before my first contest season. And in both of these pictures here, I'm weighing around 211 pounds. To give you guys some perspective, I've been 5 foot 10 inches since sophomore year of high school, so 5 foot 10 here at 211. And I mean, I don't know for sure, but if I had to estimate, I was probably around 20 or more body fat percentage. But I mean, it's kind of hard to say when you're that fat. But basically, the way that I got to this point is I dieted up, or I kind of bulked with a ridiculously high caloric surplus because I didn't know any better. From the time that I was 130 pounds, and I think it took me like 14 months to gain whatever, the 80 pounds to 211. And what it came down to is that I just didn't understand at the time what a realistic goal was for me in terms of building muscle, because I was comparing myself to, you know, like Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, all those guys, 'cause I thought that those guys, the things that they did, I thought they were realistic goals for me as well. And obviously that's not true. But yeah, prior to this, or like on my way up to this point, I had no idea about flexible dieting. I didn't know what tracking macros was, so all I did was I counted calories, and I made sure I got like somewhere around 5,000 or 6,000 calories every single day. And obviously that was a ridiculously large surplus. I was gaining, I think, like a pound every week. And yeah, this is what happens. So this next one, are you admiring my slippers right there? The floor is really dirty in my dorm room last year because I lived with some other people. But anyway, this was, I think, January of 2013, before my 2013 season, this past season. And in this picture, again, 5 foot 10, I think I weighed around 202 or 203. Again, I can't be sure about the body fat percentage, but I'd say somewhere around, I don't know, 12, maybe a little more, a little less. But yeah, I mean, 202, 203, still pretty damn heavy, and obviously still pretty fat. I think you can definitely tell, though, between the last two pictures and this picture, I look a little bit more muscular and obviously not quite as fat, but still, you know, pretty fat. I gained, what, I think from contest season before this, I was 176-ish on stage, and I went up to, in this picture, 202 or 203, so that was a gain of 27 pounds in roughly 6 months. Now, if we compare that to this picture, this was taken in January of this year, towards the end of January, so like a month ago maybe. At the peak of my off season, or peak of my bulk, whatever you want to call it. Right here, I think I was weighing around 185, maybe a little bit more, but definitely not 186, not quite. So I came up from, I think, 169, 170-ish stage weight to this point, so that's like 15, 16 pounds in 5 months, which is obviously a lot slower than I've ever gained weight. But yeah, I mean, obviously you can tell, so much more muscular and nowhere near as fat in this picture. This comparison is probably the most relevant just because the difference between the two off-season was the smallest. I mean, the first bulk, I guess if you can call it that, when I got to 211, I sort of didn't really know what I was doing. But both off-seasons preceding these two pictures, I knew how to track macros. I used flexible dieting to get to this point, and my training was not exactly the same, but it was pretty similar in terms of structure towards progressive overload. And the only main difference, or the biggest difference I would say, is the size of my surplus, my caloric surplus, and the amount of weight that I gain each week or each month. The common theme here is obviously the faster you gain weight, the more fat you're likely to gain. And the reason for that is that you can only build muscle at a certain rate, and increasing your surplus past a certain point doesn't mean that you're going to gain any more muscle or gain muscle faster than being at like sort of the minimum surplus to gain muscle. I mean, even if your training is optimal and your macronutrient distribution is optimal, your surplus only needs to be a certain amount over your maintenance, and I can't quantify that amount, but it only has to be a certain amount over your maintenance in order to build muscle. And any amount over that, any calories more than that, is not going to force your body to build more muscle. What it's going to do is going to be stored as energy in the form of muscle glycogen, or more likely after a certain point it's going to be stored as fat. So having a very large caloric surplus, other than obviously being full, it's not going to help you a whole lot, because it's going to make you store more fat. And obviously the more fat you store in your off season, the harder time you're going to have when it comes to time to diet down. Realistically, I think that as a drug-free bodybuilder, and again, if you're not a drug-free competitor, this has no application towards you at all, but as a drug-free athlete or competitor or whatever, you can probably, if you took a year between the first time you compete, or from this season until your next contest next year, so let's say that's like what, I don't know, 6 to 8 month off season. In a 6 to 8 month off season, you can probably expect to build at most like 3 to 4 pounds of stage weight. And what I mean by that is, by the time you diet down and get back to contest body fat percentage again, you might be at most 3 to 4 pounds heavier on stage in a year's time. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but my recommendation to all of you who are dieting up or bulking or whatever it is that you just be mindful of your body's potential to put on muscle mass naturally, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to gain 30 pounds in a year if only 4 or 5 of those pounds are going to be actual lean muscle, because all that means is that you have 25 pounds of fat to lose at the very least. And I know that it sounds sort of depressing to think that you can only gain whatever 3, 4, or 5, however many pounds of muscle mass in a year. Because I mean, compare that to the enhanced guys or the enhanced girls that are gaining 20, 30, maybe even 40 pounds of lean mass in a single season. They're making the amount of progress we make in 10 years. They're doing that in like 10 weeks. And it is sort of disheartening to think about that. But I mean, morality and health issues aside, if you just consider for a fact what 3 or 4 pounds of stage weight would actually look like, I mean, you can go to your grocery store right now and pick up a 16-ounce lean cut of steak and just look at how much volume that is, look how much size that is in a single pound steak, and then imagine taking 3 or 4 of those and slapping that on your frame somewhere. That's, to me at least, that seems like a lot of size. So 3 to 4 pounds of stage weight is not bad at all. And like I said, my recommendation is that you stay as lean as you can on the way up, in order to make it easy for you to diet down whenever you have to. Even if it's not for a show, just to get back down to a nice body fat percentage again. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it for this video.
Don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. Tytanium Fitness.